Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Football's Day of Shame, the Heysel Stadium Disaster. Belgium. What happened here?
On the 29th of May 1985, English football champions Liverpool FC and the Italian champions Juventus met in the Belgian capital Brussels to play for the European Cup. This match, the European Cup final, is one of the big fixtures in the football calendar. But the tragic events that unfolded that afternoon before the game even began would
Do you
cast
know
a
about
shadow
this?
over the world of
No.
football for years to come.
I know the teams. I don't know about this.
The factors were all there: fierce
Ooh.
rivalry, hooliganism, inadequate policing, and
This is
corruption.
Malice in the Palace.
Add to this volatile
Seems
mix
like
lots
it.
of alcohol, overcrowded conditions, and a completely unsuitable venue, and the result was 39 people killed and over 600 wounded in what some
What the
No,
fuck?
what?
39 people killed and 600 wounded? What is
How
this,
do you-
war?
How does that happen? How? That's more than Day of Shame.
have described as one of
Aw.
football's darkest days.
Wow.
This has been one of the more difficult stories I've covered in
Wow.
terms of getting to the nub of actually who was responsible. Some sources lay the blame squarely and solely on the Liverpool fans, saying that they were the only guilty party. Other sources take into account the behaviour of the Juventus fans, poor organisation by UEFA, the Belgian police, whose actions seem to me to veer between being completely inept and overtly violent. So I'll try my best to present here the facts and the stories I see it, but with many conflicting eyewitness accounts, it's difficult to provide a definitive single version. So to set the scene, the period between the mid-1970s to the mid-1980s was one in which European football struggled to deal with the problems of pitch invasions, violence and hooliganism. Many football teams had hardcore groups of supporters within their fan base, supporters who enjoyed a good old dust-up with rivals' fans as much, if not more, than the game itself. They'd come fully prepared for mass brawls, armed with shivs, iron bars, Stanley knives, you name it.
They don't do checks?
These firms, as they
Well, back then, definitely they didn't do checks, no. Nowadays, probably, because especially, with terrorism, it definitely would happen in Manchester and with Ariana's concert, that was... So, I definitely think now they would check, but back then, yeah. I really feel like checking started with 9/11. Because even TSA wouldn't check before 9/11,
were known included some notorious names. Like if you were growing
I
up
get
in
it.
Britain in
I
the
mean, if you know they get kind of rough, you would want to bring some sort of protection.
80s, like I did, you definitely didn't want to meet anybody from, for example, the Millwall Bushwhackers, the Leeds United Service Crew, or West Ham's infamous Intercity firm. The hooligan problem wasn't confined to just domestic games. It was well known that these firms or crews would happily travel abroad to cause trouble. This had happened many times prior to 1985,
Oh, they
and
look
England
for
fans
trouble.
already had a bad reputation in Europe. So when planning for a big game like the European Cup final, crowd safety and crowd control should have been at the top of the list for the match organisers UEFA. But with hindsight, they seem to have made a very strange choice in selecting the venue for the 1985 Cup final. Now, available at the time to host the game were Madrid's Santiago Bernabeu Stadium and Barcelona's Camp Nou. They're both big, recently renovated football grounds. However, it was Brussels' ageing and somewhat decrepit Heysel Stadium that was chosen. Built in the 1920s, Heysel Stadium was a lovely example of early Art Deco design, and over the years it had hosted all manner of track and field events, as well as cycling and boxing matches. It survived the Second World War intact, but by the late 70s and early 80s, it was a sad shadow of its former glory. Terraces were outdated with no seating, and the concrete safety barriers were cracked and decaying.
No seating, so you had to stand the whole game to watch it. Wow.
I get it. I mean, when you have that adrenaline, everyone is cheering.
Some parts of the terraces hadn't had any renovation work carried out on them since the day the stadium was
I
built.
feel like you can
It was
see.
old, it was tired, and it
Said
shone.
no seating, I don't know.
Jerry Clarkson, the deputy chief of
Oh,
London
no,
Fire
yeah.
Brigade,
I guess you can
Yeah.
sit on the on the stairs, but
Yeah.
if people standing in front of you, what the fuck you going to see?
later stated that the condition of Heysel Stadium was beyond belief, completely unfit. In the stanchions that supported the crowd control barriers, the reinforcing bars were already exposed. They could not have contained even moderate pressure. The piers on the wall which collapsed were built the wrong way round.
Oh, this is looking real rough.
Oh, so the walls collapsed. That's why people died. I thought people
Oh.
stabbed each other or whatever. Oh, okay.
Wow, I thought it
Prior
was
to the
like a
game, officials from
stampede.
both Liverpool
People got crushed.
Yeah, but if the walls collapse, then it's a little
All the
different.
money that people spending and they don't have infrastructure.
and Juventus had urged UEFA officials to change the venue, warning of the danger posed by the outdated infrastructure. But UEFA refused to change the venue. They'd given it a quick 30-minute inspection, and apparently that was enough to get the go-ahead.
That's
And one comment I read
no.
suggested that in fact the decision to stick with Heysel was actually a parting gift to a high-up Belgian UEFA official who was retiring, but I haven't been able to confirm that during my research. The next step on the road to disaster came from the arrangement of the fans inside the stadium. Attendance was expected to be around 55 to 60,000 spectators,
Honestly, the
which were mainly
setup
Liverpool.
kind of made it sound like the people were roughhousing and it collapsed, and then people died.
Yeah.
Not anything about a collapse.
Yeah.
Juventus fans. The Liverpool fans, the Reds, would have one end of the stadium, and the Juventus fans would be kept at the opposite end, and between them there'd be neutral ground. However, with the match being played in Belgium, there was a ticket allowance made for neutral fans, and these tickets, they were only available to buy in Belgium, were intended for corporate use or for any Belgian football fans who wanted to show up to the game. Somehow, these tickets found their way into the hands of unscrupulous ticket agents who sold them on the black market, and they almost all got sold to Juventus. Now, for some reason, the so-called neutral zone had been allocated Stand Z, which was up in the Liverpool end. So, as the supposedly neutral block began to fill up with Juventus fans, they were only separated from the tightly packed Liverpool fans by a thin, flimsy chicken wire fence and 8 Belgian police officers. Entry into the stadium, by all accounts, had been chaotic. Belgian police, who were fed up with the unruly and drunken fans causing trouble in the city centre and
Why they
outside the
put it in black
stadium,
and
were
white?
more
That's
than
not
happy
that
to get
long
as many of
ago.
them as possible packed.
They do it like the 1800s.
I think black and white was a thing back then. When I look at my parents' photos from the 80s, it's black and white. I mean, here in the States, I think maybe technology was more advanced, but I think Europe was still black and white in the 80s.
Into the stadium as early
Like in terms of photography, like TV, we've seen Eurovision since what 68, I think we see color, but photography, I think it was still black and
as
white.
possible. Fans spoke of getting in without even having their tickets checked, which resulted in unchecked tickets being passed back to allow extra fans without tickets to get in.
They still do that today. Miami, they broke in, were climbing from the ceilings. No one learned the lesson.
Eyewitness has told of rowdy groups that were just kicking big holes through the crumbling cinder block walls and then just scrambling through the big hole and getting inside without paying. The upshot of all this was that well over an hour before kickoff, the Liverpool and
But we do have color too, so why some are? I guess color was available, but not widely.
Juventus
Or to
ends
be
were already
remastered.
packed.
Okay,
It was hot, sweaty, and many people had had far too much to drink. There was no love lost between these two clubs, and taunts, chants, and gestures soon turned to missiles being lobbed. Fans found that the crumbling stands provided a nice supply of rocks to chuck as they kicked the old terraces into pieces. Down at the Juventus end, the Ultras, the hardcore Juventus crew, had already broken down barriers and were facing off against the Belgian police on the edge of the pitch. The mood of the afternoon was turning sour, tempers were fraying, and drunk fans were getting restless waiting for the game to start. And then something happened, and the mood got very ugly very quickly. Some accounts say that word got around that a young Liverpool fan had been beaten up by Juventus. Another eyewitness account described fireworks being let off by the Ultras that were fired into the crowd at the Liverpool end. Whatever the actual reason, there was a sudden eruption of anger, and the result was tragic. In the zone behind the goal, there was a surge from the Liverpool fans, charging down the thin wire fence and overrunning the weak police presence. As the Liverpool fans tore into Z Block, the Belgian police seemed powerless to stop them, and the panicked Juventus fans, seeing the horde of yelling yobs charging down on them, stampeded to the far side of Z Block, only to find their way barred by the concrete wall at the end and the crowd control barriers to the front. As the frantic crowd pushed from behind, those pressed up against the wall just had nowhere to go. The pressure of the crush became unbearable, and within a few moments, the old concrete block wall gave way, and a mass of struggling, crushed people went over with it. Juventus fan and grandfather Otto Laurentini had bought tickets for his son Roberto and the two nephews, Andrea and Gianni. He was in Z Block, and he remembered vividly the moment that it all went horribly wrong. They charged. We retreated. There were women and children with us. I saw the wall getting closer. I escaped through a gap
Yes, I don't see women and children. It's mostly men.
at the top of the terrace. Then I found myself on the pitch. I shouted Roberto's name. I saw my nephew Andrea with his head in his hands. Roberto was lying on the terrace. I put my ear to his chest and listened. I thought I could hear a pulse, but I realised it was my own heart thumping. He was dead. A television crew was filming me. Later, I saw footage of myself finding my dead son.
Oh.
It was a catastrophe. In the chaos and panic, people were being trampled underfoot and crushed to death by the pressure of the crowd surging from behind. Riot police waded into the melee, batons swinging, lashing out at anyone in striking distance, compounding the confusion. At first, nobody seemed...
how being trampled or being crushed can kill you? Just by people, like people's body weight.
It wasn't him, it was the concrete wall, I think, that killed this person. Because I think he fell off the concrete wall, like, so you know how it goes levels, and the wall collapsed and they fell off. So they fell and the wall fell with them, so it's like they fell on it's not just the stampede, I think the height also is what killed them too.
To realise just how bad things were. Singing, chanting and rioting continued as bodies...
But yes, stampede is kind of crazy how stampede kills people, but you know, when you think about it, but yeah.
These were being pulled out from the tangle of humanity next to the collapsed wall and hauled away on makeshift stretchers. TV cameras filmed the disaster live as it unfolded, incredulous commentators struggling to find words to describe the terrible scene that was being played out in front of them. Captains from both teams appealed for calm over the stadium loudspeakers, but it was already too late. As the minutes passed by and order began to be restored...
So this was all before the game even started. This is crazy.
The area was cleared and the horrible truth laid bare.
Who they're sitting next to,
39
and they
people
realize that's the opponent. It's not neutral.
Dead, the youngest of them just 11 years old. Over 600 spectators had been injured.
Wow.
Block Z looked like the aftermath of a bomb blast, with debris and bodies littering the stand. Shocked and dazed fans and police stood around seemingly dumbfounded.
It's a mess.
Yeah, looks horrible.
At what had just happened. People couldn't seem to take in what they were seeing. It was just too awful. Then, to the surprise of almost everyone, including most of the players, officials decided to carry on with the game. The match kicked off even as a temporary...
You're lying. You're lying. You're lying. You're lying. You're lying.
I thought, okay, the game is definitely not playing.
You're lying.
They play the game. People...
Oh,
what?
No.
600 injured, like 50 people there or something, and they play the game.
Mortuary was being set up in the car
Because
park.
what they're going to do, refund the people? There's people who take bets. I don't know. That's too much. That's foul.
Hundreds of injured were being treated or rushed to hospital.
Whoa.
Images of the jubilant Juventus star Michel Platini, bare-chested and grinning as he held up the winner's cup and ran a lap of glory around the pitch, seemed completely irreconcilable with the images of horror which were witnessed just hours earlier. To many, playing the game under such terrible circumstances seemed to be in very poor judgment indeed. Officials defended this decision, saying that they feared more violence if the game wasn't played, but many today look back upon the decision to play as a big mistake. Mark Lawrenson, one of the Liverpool players, remembered the Belgian chief of police ordering the players to carry on with the game. The chief of police for the game then came into our dressing room and said that the game was going ahead, and we all said, we're not playing when people were dying. We asked what the Juventus players had said, and he told us that they too had said they weren't playing the game. He said that he couldn't be held responsible for what happened if the game didn't kick off. Whatever we said to him, it didn't make any difference. The inquiry into the Heysel disaster seems to have been ad hoc at best. There was a notable lack of coordinated effort to get to the root causes of the tragedy. A Belgian judge, Marina Kopieters, released a report 18 months later in which the blame was laid directly and solely on the Liverpool fans. Now, this suited the UEFA officials as it deflected attention from any...
No, it's more people to blame. First of all, the infrastructure of the building, the organization, the security.
I think there's only one thing to blame is UEFA. They were greedy. They tried to save money, so they gave us a shitty stadium instead of going in Barcelona or in Real Madrid stadium to play.
They wanted to give people affordable tickets.
Yeah, no, they wanted to save money. They probably didn't have money to host it there, so they didn't provide enough security. As all the blame is on UEFA.
They took a risk.
The inspections, they lasted 30 minutes. They approved it when the concerns were raised. It's all the blame is all on UEFA.
Paid for that.
The blame is all on UEFA. Juventus fans, Liverpool fans. I mean,
I don't think this is on the fans.
It's not on the fans, because the fans do. If you know, fans do this every match. This is not on the fans, because fans do this every.
Yeah.
That's why you go to football games to fight others. Yeah, that's
You know,
Fight Club.
this reminds me in the graduation when parents all of a sudden they lose all decorum because their kid is walking the stage. I'm like, wow,
Mm.
it's not that serious.
Poor planning on
Wait
their
until
part.
your kid is walking
Only
the
the
stage.
English fans were responsible. Of that, there is no doubt.
I have some decorum.
Reports
properly
detailing the
stand
appalling
up,
condition of the
clap,
stadium,
and then I
the
sit
black
back down.
market selling of tickets, the poor policing and seemingly haphazard seating arrangements were either discounted or not given as evidence. 4 years later, in 1989, criminal proceedings began. 29 people stood trial for their roles in the tragedy, 26 Liverpool fans and 3 Belgian officials. 14 fans were found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Wow.
Albert Roosens, the head of the Belgian Football Association, was
He
given a
lost his
6-month
job?
suspended sentence for criminal
Only
negligence.
6 months.
And Johan
Oh,
Mahayu,
wow.
the police officer in charge of Z Block, was given a 9-month sentence. The rest of the
I
defendants
think
were
also
acquitted.
it's the police fault too as well. They have a duty to uphold safety.
But-
and for them to go say, "Oh, go play," because I don't want to be held responsible if these people.
But that
don't
was
play.
after the game, after the fight, though.
Mm.
So that police, I cannot hold police accountable because there was 8 officers. What 8 officers going to do against thousands of
Yeah,
people?
but they called backup.
I don't think the city was ready with the officers. Again,
Well, they could have
UEFA.
gave instructions to UEFA. Okay, it's a wrap, sweetie. We got to go.
Mm.
The
civil
city is shutting it down, and also the city should have inspected. What do you mean?
I
It's
think,
the
I
whole
think,
building.
I think too.
It needs to be inspected by a third party. No.
I think
That building
UEFA
I
is
have
1A and
long
the city
time
is
been on
1B
dis-
because
been
the
under
city should have
destruction.
also not approved this. Yeah.
Trial brought by bereaved relatives against UEFA officials resulted in no convictions. But despite UEFA coming out of the whole affair unblemished, the president at the time, Jacques Georges, wrote shortly before his death in 2004, "Do you think that I'm not revisited by visions of the blood running down Terrace Z and the piles of mutilated bodies?
At
It
least
is a
he
burden
still
I
had
will
a
carry
time
to my
live. I mean, those people died.
Yeah.
deathbed, but I am not ever going to discuss this in public."
Wow.
Although the wounds from Heysel remained open and raw for years afterwards, it seemed that neither Liverpool or Juventus had any real desire to mark or remember the occasion.
I wonder if there's
Indeed, if
like
anything, it seems
people
like all involved wished to
associated to this here to this day.
If they're still alive,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's in '85. It's not that far.
So those
off.
people can be like, what? How old?
I-
If they're like 20 here.
I don't know, 40. I mean, it's 40 years ago, so 60.
60.
Yeah.
forget the tragedy as soon as possible. Michel Platini, the goal scorer that night, rarely talks publicly about it, and the event is not spoken of at Liverpool club reunions. Mark Lawrence
I mean, I get it. You know, people don't want to talk about it. It's a
Yeah, it's
tragedy.
embarrassing.
Yeah, it's
says
embarrassing.
it's the elephant in the room. It was just never mentioned. No one talked about it. For years, the Heysel disaster didn't even warrant a mention on the Juventus club official website. The Heysel disaster seems to hold a special place of ignominy in football's
Do they
history.
celebrate
a dark
like
stain.
do not
which
forget or to remember or to give like condolences and
I don't know.
remembrance?
I don't know.
Wow.
brings back unpleasant
Whoa.
memories of yobbish behaviour and crass and insensitive decision making. The two teams
Wow.
eventually met again in 2005. Fans at the Liverpool end held up
Wow.
Doesn't say what day it happened.
Yeah.
a
Only
huge
the
sign,
year.
amicizia,
Let me
friendship.
see.
But witnesses report that many Juventus fans turned their backs to this display. It seems that in the world of football rivalry,
That's
Oh,
today?
yesterday. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, that's what I
wow.
wanted to see.
Wow.
Okay.
it might be easier to forget than it is to forgive.
Look at the ages. Wow.
All young
Some people can
all
have
young
full
people.
lives to this day.
Yeah, not the oldest is 50. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, but there's 158.
58.
But everybody else was 50 or younger. They're all young people. Wow.
Wow. 11 is the youngest.
Wow.
Wow. Can I see the comments?
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy they post this video so people can be aware of the lost lives because those people can be here today.
That's crazy. 1985 has to be the worst year for football tragedies as this occurred close to Bradford City fire. What makes this tragedy so
Oh.
painful is just about everything and the inquiry which was putting it mildly a shambles. RP to 39 people.
Mm-mm.
Thank you for posting a dreadful disaster.
This is a good post.
Yeah.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.